Ranieri tries one!
This just in. Apparently, Arsenal's team have actually been together for 7 years. Yep, that's right. While Leandro Trossard was at Genk and Gabriel was on loan at Dinamo Zagreb and Declan Rice was at West Ham and Miles O'Skelly was 11 years old in the Arsenal Academy, they were secretly getting together and training for the last 7 years, even though they were at different teams. They were communicating and they're really learning tactics with each other and how to play with each other, all off the clock, all moonlighting, just so that they could barely squeeze a win against Chelsea 1-0 in March of 2025. This is not that kind of gooner, and we are coming to you after, like I said, it was a win. It was a win. It wasn't a pretty one, but it was a 1-0 win against Chelsea at the Emirates, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I just want to ask my co-hosts here. John, I'll throw this to you first. Do you think that qualifies as tapping up if you're playing with a group of guys for 7 years before you're actually in a team together?
Yeah, I think if there are rules against anything in the Premier League that are actually enforced, then that would be a problem. But clearly there aren't, unless you're Arsenal. So actually, yeah, maybe there are. I think we'll just wait for the sanctions to come in against Arsenal here next week.
Yeah, I think we might be on the hook for that. What do you think, Drew? Does that cross the line into tampering or into tapping up?
Sorry, I'm like face deep in a bowl of chili right now, so my my thoughts are going to be minimal. But I think
apparently Casiedo has been face deep in a bowl of chili for 7 years.
He may actually have been. Maybe that's how he edges himself. I have absolutely no idea. He is that kind of
again, not that kind of gooner.
Yeah,
he is that kind of gooner.
You're welcome. I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.
He is that kind of gooner.
All right. Well, that was Drew. You can follow him on Twitter DGK. And on Blue Sky at Supply and Demand, Drew, and we have obviously we have John as well at 305cast and Twitter on Twitter, and then Yellow Ribbons on Blue Sky. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Caicedo's comments and our risers and fallers from the Arsenal match. I think we're going to have to get a little complicated at moments there, and we're just going to talk about how shit Chelsea are. In addition to maybe a few transfer related things. So we'll go ahead and before we dive into the risers and fallers, just I'm going to open it up to both of you guys. How did you feel watching that match? I mean, are you okay to just take the 3 points and move on, or are you disappointed with how he played?
Well, now that I'm actually done with I just ate that bowl in a record amount of time, so you got priorities dictating to be ready for this podcast. No, I genuinely, and I feel like John and I briefly talked about it in the WhatsApp group during the match, where for me right now, we know we're not at our best for a number of reasons, right? So for me, would have preferred to see us put in a better performance. Would I have preferred a scoreline that wasn't as narrow? Yeah, absolutely. But given everything contextually, I'll take a 1-0 win over a direct rival any day of the week right now. 3 points are 3 points. With how consistent Forest are proving to be, I just care about points totals at the moment. We don't have to win pretty right now. I just want to keep informed because I don't want to handle the discourse if we drop the third and Forest finish runner-up this season, to be quite frank with you. So if we win, I don't care how it happens. And also, not for nothing, and I know we're going to come on to this more later on when we talk about Caicedo, but I just feel like I think we blunted Chelsea so well in terms of offering them very little in attack. It doesn't matter to me that we only won 1-0. At no point in that match was I ever afraid of them scoring a goal. And I think for me, it's such a big takeaway that even when we're not fit and firing in the final third, or transitions are off, and we're still missing some key pieces, we're still so good defensively that should give fans a little bit more confidence as well while we kind of go through the period and hopefully getting players back after the international break. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's a really good point, by the way, where, our defense really won us this match. And at the end of the day, even though we're missing a couple attacking pieces, we'll probably get on to, the likes of Jurrien Timber and William Saliba and, Gabriel Lewis Kelly. I mean, all four of those guys, I think, really had a great day at the office and kept Chelsea at arm's length for the vast majority of the match, which is why it's really crazy when Caicedo comes out and says, oh, we are better than them. And when Maresca says, I don't see a difference really between Arsenal and Chelsea. There's a difference. The difference is, we were attacking Chelsea's box at will, and, we had a bunch of shots. It's just that the people those shots fell to aren't wearing their shooting boots at this point in time. But John, how about you? Are you also happy to take the 3 points, or do you think we should have battered these guys? I guess is what the question is.
I'm happy with the 3 points, but I also think we should have battered them. Yeah, I mean, especially given the circumstances, and these comments that they're that close to us, I just missed the mark completely. They don't get that much better with Cole Palmer versus how much better we get with Saka. So we already beat them without Saka, and they didn't have Cole Palmer. If they get Cole Palmer, maybe it's a closer match between us, but then our best player comes back and it's not even close. So, at the end of the day, 3 points are 3 points. I'm going to take that absolutely against Chelsea, and let them come up with all the excuses they want. They lost, and that's what these these London derbies are about. I think I'm saying North London because of what happened with Tottenham, which was hilarious. But that's a whole nother story. I mean, they're just collapsing. But anyway, yes, London derby. You just want 3 points from those, right? So it doesn't really matter how you get them. It's kind of hard to look at the broader context of the league just because it's gone, for them. I mean, there's no way that Liverpool are going to drop that many points. But at least we're in it, and we want to keep doing that because we want to comfortably make top 4 at least. And you got to win games to do that. And the more comfortable we get with that, I think the less chances that we're going to have of having to overexert players going down the road if we do want to make a good effort in the Champions League, things like that. So even the games where you don't really play excellently, to get 3 points in the league to maintain that Champions League position, or at least a fight for a Champions League position, is necessary.
Yeah, and we are. I mean, I wasn't really happy with the match generally. Obviously, 3 points are 3 points, and that's what matters at the end of the day. But we're 9 points ahead of Chelsea now, 10 points ahead of City. It's almost an unassailable lead in second place. So given that's kind of our baseline now, and the fact that we're probably going to avoid any massive crisis in terms of Champions League qualification, I think that at least is something that we can take away from this season, which is positive. But let's jump into the risers, and for those of you who haven't joined us before, risers and fallers, real straightforward. Risers, we're going to talk about players or managers, or, maybe something conceptual, even if we feel like it, something that we're looking at in a more positive way after a certain match. And then fallers are, any players or coaches or anything really that's at least related to what we're talking about that has fallen a little bit in our eyes, that, the stock has gone down a little bit. So, we're going to get into that. And John, I'll go to you first for your riser. Who do you got?
Marino.
Okay.
Yeah. It's either Marino or so. What do we? Do I get only one?
Yeah, we'll just do one each.
All right. Never mind. Timber.
Okay.
Timber.
Yeah.
Marino was a good shout, I think, but Timber, and it's not even just this game. He's kind of low key been one of our best players this season, and at least the most consistent. If you look at his performances coming back from an ACL injury and stepping up like this, I mean, it's very impressive. And it was kind of unclear where he would be. We thought maybe he'd be on the left, maybe he'd be on the right. We were kind of sure he'd be on the right, though, but you don't know because everything was kind of in flux. And to see him step in the way he has, and just week after week, even when there's difficulty in front of him because he's playing with such a young player up there, and Saka is out. Just imagine when Saka comes back and that connection between Timber and Saka. I'm really looking forward to seeing that kind of flourishing. Obviously, given the time that Saka might need, hopefully he doesn't need that much, but assuming that he does, I'm excited to see that. So again, another great performance from Timber, kind of under the radar on how good he's been. So I think it was easy to give it to Marino at first. That was like my gut reaction, just because he is becoming a very consistent threat. And that was a beautiful header that he scored. Very difficult, by the way, like kind of deceptively difficult kind of a header. I don't know if he's necessarily trying to put it in the goal or just flick it back to the back post to see if someone's there, but I'm going to give it to him and say he was trying to score there. But that's kind of obvious. So I think Timber for me.
Yeah, no, I think Timber is probably the shout from this match. I was writing about this yesterday, and he won the most duels of any player in the match. He won possession more than anybody in the match. He had more interceptions than anybody in the match. He won 4 or 5 aerial duels. Yeah, I mean, he was everywhere, and he absolutely kept his side of the field just completely snuffed out in terms of any attacking output from Chelsea. So yeah, no, I think he had an excellent game, and also him telling Maresca to try harder.
Point. Yeah.
I mean that on its own is enough for him to be a riser, in my opinion. So great day all around for him. Drew, any thoughts on Timber?
I just want listeners to know that John and I aren't sort of like symbiotically connected if they think we are, because John wasn't here last week and I said the same thing about Timber last week for my riser almost verbatim, and I think that why that's important and why I agree with John is because not only is it impressive of how well he's come back from that injury, but it also shows that, I think I also mentioned this last week, where we now don't have to worry about, God forbid, what happens if something happens to Ben White, or in inverse, what happens if something happens to Timber, because we have 2 excellent right backs who, and as Thomas Tuchel was actually naming his England squad, we know that White will be in the picture now that Southgate's gone. Timber will likely be in the picture moving forward for the Netherlands. So it kind of shows the quality we have in that position, and how both of them can kind of get on with the players that are ahead of them. So, yeah, I would agree. I think Timber, yet again, was fantastic. And as I kind of said last week, I think he's probably been one of our best 2/3 players over the last couple of months. Probably shouts for probably a decent shot for player of the season, to be honest with you. If this form persists across the rest of the campaign, if we make a deep run in Champions League, solidify second, he's been exceptional. And the fact that he is, as I can see, is still, and it shows that he bounced back well from injury, I think, yeah, it's impressive. He's not my riser, but it's a great call from John. And again, John, you're on the same page. My riser probably, it's tricky, but I'm going to say Odegaard. And I think the reason why is because I get so annoyed, and Cham and I have talked about this before. It's not like a shot at Cham, but like, I get annoyed when fans accuse Odegaard of hiding, but I think Odegaard was actually great in this match. And against a midfield duo that's tricky to negotiate. Caicedo's had a good season. Enzo's had a good season. Chelsea can be tricky when they usually, on their day, they can be difficult to break down. They have a lot of athleticism in that midfield. So I think Odegaard managed the match quite well. I think this is kind of his usual self in terms of like leading the press, transitions. He again was creative, got the assist for the goal. So, and a lot of fans always say that he hides in big matches against rivals. But the fact that I think he was one of our top 3 performers in the match, I think for me, I'd put him as a riser because it shows that I think now he's actually starting to actually finally get past his injury, whereas before there were a lot of questions on if he was fully fit post that injury. So I think now we're kind of seeing, him a little bit to where we expect him to be. He's not perfect, as in the ways that he was the prior 2 seasons, but I would probably say, yeah, I think he's doing enough now again to show that I think he's just about, a couple percentage points away from being back to his best. Again, that's going to be really important down the stretch for, the fact that Real Madrid are right around the corner, kind of under pressure in the league a bit. So, yeah, I think he's refinding form at the right time.
Yeah, I think Odegaard's an interesting one, honestly. I don't think he had a bad game, but And obviously he had the assist. I think he had a really really fun moment where he kind of just like chipped the ball a little bit past. I think it was Nkunku who was defending him, and just kind of took off running. I think he looked pretty good at points. I also do think that. Caicedo really tried to basically kick him out of the game, and I think that affected his play a little bit. But Odegaard definitely. It's weird because the more I've thought about this game, I originally came away from the match thinking that like everyone had played terribly except the defense. But the more I kind of went back and reviewed the stats and really just considered the game and like rewatched some parts of it as I was writing about it, the more I realized that there's really only one player in particular I'm disappointed with, and it's not Odegaard. I think Odegaard overall had, a pretty good game, and it's just one of those things where I think he looked as good as he could without having that right side around him, and I think that's just kind of what we're going to see for a while. So, I don't really have any issues with that take. John, any thoughts on Odegaard's performance?
No, I thought he was decent. I think he was, it wasn't a bad performance by any stretch, but I know that it's not his best. We've seen him be able to do a lot more than that, but like Drew said, he is kind of just starting to, I think, come out of the injury. At least that's the hope. So, no, I have no objection to that.
Fingers crossed that he doesn't get run into the ground for Norway over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I feel like some people just like take a breath of relief when they hit the international break, and I'm always sitting here just let them come back, okay? Just don't let them get hurt.
So just on that real fast, they play Moldova and Israel. If he sees any minutes against Moldova, I'm going to be really annoyed. Israel makes sense because they're actually halfway decent at times, but Moldova, he has no business playing in that match. Just
hopefully,
please God, leave him be. Like, even though it's a qualifying match, like, he can probably come off the bench and they'd probably still be just fine. Yeah. So, we'll see.
Yeah. My riser is going to be Alexander Isak. And that's because watching this match, we create chance after chance after chance. I think we were excellent in the first 2/3, and then when we got into Chelsea's area, it just the final ball was off. Whether it was Martinelli not being effective enough, or Odegaard slightly overhitting passes, or Trossard just forgetting how to shoot for the second or third match in a row. I'm getting real tired of like counting up and like kind of going back and like writing about the specific moments that Trossard got these great chances and then took an extra touch or scuffed a shot really unnecessarily. And so just I remember consciously thinking while we were watching that, just we need a killer. We need a killer in the box. And then a couple hours later, I was watching Liverpool against Newcastle. Isak, I don't even think had a particularly great game against Liverpool, but he just got that half chance in the box. Boom, goal, made it 2-0. Turned out to be the winning goal. And, he walks away with a trophy for that. And we could use a player like that. And, there's a lot of smoke around Isak potentially leaving Newcastle if they don't make the Champions League. We're, very our interest is well documented, I should say, in Isak. And it sounds like, and I'm just going off the reporting, so this might not be the case, but it sounds like, if journalists are to be believed, that we are strongly considering ponying up the 9 figures it would cost to bring Isak to North London. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think that's worth it. Up to a certain point, obviously. I don't think I'd go like north of 130 right now, but I think a guy like Isak, that's worth the money. That's the guy who really wins in the margins for you and takes you from a great team to an unbeatable team if you have the right pieces around him. So just watching us miss chance after chance and mess up 1v1s and scuff shots wide. it felt twice as worse to reflect back on that, watching what what Isak did on Sunday and what he's done for the rest of the season. So, yeah, honestly, I kind of hope we do make that move in the summer, even if it is going to cost us an arm and a leg. But, do you guys see it the same way? Do you think Isak is worth the money? To, if we were to pay $130 for him in the summer, do you think that'd be worth it? Or do you think we're better off like getting a Šeško or an Ekatike in another piece?
I mean, if you can get Isak, get Isak. It's one that's the least. It's like the least risk out of all of those. I mean, it's a Premier League proven baller. So if it's going to cost those figures, I mean, that's the kind of money. There's a reason why he's going to cost that much, and I don't think it would be not worth it to do that. I guess it's a question of at the expense of what? Are you now not going to be able to build up more avenues of the squad that you're going to need? It's almost a risk I'd be willing to take, just the level that he's at and what he'd be able to provide to our team, and instantly, change the dynamic of this attack in a way that is a very scary proposition for opponents. So yeah, I think if you have the money, you got it, and you can make that deal happen. You just got to do it.
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat. Just looking at the center forward market, Šeško's really good. I think he's still a couple years off being the final product, and we need a win now guy. Ekatike is kind of the same thing. Different profile of player, obviously, but those guys aren't ready to walk into Arsenal's first team and do what Isak would do. So that's just kind of where I am. Sounds like you are there as well, John. But Drew, how about you?
I mean, if you asked me this question last summer and the price was $100 million, it wouldn't even be up for a debate, right? But so we know that there's probably going to be a fifth Champions League spot for English teams. If Newcastle make Champions League, they're not going to sell him. And then he has no reason to leave as well. Like, we'd be offering nothing over what they could potentially, put on the table for him for whatever it would be. And that's kind of, I think, the fine margins, right? And we also know that Barcelona want a striker. And I think if it comes down to us or Barcelona, any footballer picks Barcelona because they're top two club in the world, right? So I think I'm worried and wary that fans, I don't mean you two, I mean fans in general, because I see a lot of the online discourse and it makes me want to put my head through a wall. That fans are they're already getting tied to the fact that this is the only thing we can and should be doing. And while I agree, I think it comes with the least amount of risk in terms of players. He's not even in his prime age yet. He's Premier League proven. He's a killer in the box. He turns up against big teams, and he will probably, in the system we have, he'll easily eclipse his 1-goal mark every season. None of those things are questionable. I just feel like the season proved to us why we need the type of quality and depth that can sustain a potential other injury bug. And my concern is if we're talking like paying $150 million for Isak, I don't want to do it because I would rather stretch the $150 million across 3 players instead of 1. That to me makes more financial sense in terms of how you want to build out a team. I'd rather have, 3 8 out of 10s come in instead of 1 10 out of 10 and 2 6 out of 10s. I think we kind of talked about that before. But yeah, I feel like Ornstein said it, where we're in such a strong financial position that we're probably going to have a big summer. I don't know if he said that he doesn't know about 300 million or whatever, but realistically, if we can actually afford to get Isak and then to go and get, Zubimendi, Naipan, and a winger, whoever that winger might be, without it damaging those prospects, then yeah, you do it. And you don't need to think twice. I also just think that we have to always consider that we can want Isak as much as we want. But if Newcastle gets Champions League, the odds of him leaving drastically reduce. Right. And we have to be okay with that. And then it becomes, what the next best thing is. And that's a whole other discussion for another time, obviously. But I would agree with you where I think if the window exists to get him, and it's not going to absolutely ruin us in the bank account, then yeah, you do it. You don't think twice. and then that's kind of it because history kind of bar what Liverpool doing this season with Salah because he's not a center forward. History does kind of show you that usually when you win the league, usually your main goal scorer is in the top 3 or 4 best in the league in terms of goal scored that season. You have Haaland doing what he does. With us, it was always Henry or Van Persie or whoever. And even though we didn't win leagues with Van Persie, he still gave us a chance in those big games. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just one of those things where we might have to bite the bullet, but I just don't think it should ruin anything else, kind of like John said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in that if Newcastle make a top 5 spot and get into the Champions League, then maybe try one bid, but after that, like he's not coming. If it's out of our hands like that, then I can make my peace with it. Like you said, I'm not sure if that's the case for a lot of other Arsenal fans, but if he's there, you got to try. And if he's not, then we'll just have to adapt and get the next best thing. But yeah, so those are the fallers, those are the risers, and now we're going to go to the fallers. So Drew, I'll let you start with your faller, and we'll take it from there.
I have 2, but I feel like one of them is going to be one that either you or John mentioned, so I'll bypass it. Okay. The one main faller I have, it's not one particular person, it's more of an institution. I'm getting really sick of English media and how that has adversely affected online discourse with football fans in terms of the perpetual nature of racism. And for those of you that don't know or don't follow me on socials, I might not sound it, but I am definitely a Black person. So I feel like I'm qualified to speak on this topic. And it just I'm glad John's muted and he's just like
I may not sound like
the amount of times people are like, "Oh my God, you're Black." I'm like, "Well, yes." Well, you don't sound it. Like that's a whole other time for another time. But anyway.
Well, no, that's kind of. Look, that's kind of par for the course of what you're talking about.
Exactly, That's exactly right. Yeah, so I think that's a good segue. But some of the responses to the official England Twitter showing Lewis Skelly arriving at camp, it's not surprising, but it also is at the same time, and it frustrates me that fans still persist in trying to tear play, and even if they're not doing it with like the overt racism, it's the passive stuff where it's exactly what they're going for anyway. And what drives me nuts is, ironically, it's also linked to Chelsea, where how many times have we seen fans talk about Cole Palmer's celebration and how it shows his, footballing grizz or whatever. It shows that, he's got swag. But then you've got people trying to beat down the likes of Lewis Skelly for the same exact reason, just because he shows a bit of personality and who he is on and off the pitch as well. People in the comments looked at the way he was holding his right hand, and they were like, "What is it, a gang sign?" And I'm just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like, and it's to that level of critiquing that you only see when it comes to Black players. Yeah. Only ever. There's never, the same questions about their personality if it's a white player. We didn't see that for Palmer. We never saw it for Foden. We never saw it for, you can even go back further, David Beckham, who was like notorious for like stuff that he would do off the pitch. You never saw it for whoever it may have been. And I'm genuinely sick of it, because it has just affected Arsenal. And yes, Arsenal are a culture club, and the first to really embrace Black players, really build a team around it. But you also see it, you saw it with Rashford, the discourse around Rashford for the longest time. You saw it with Raheem Sterling when he was at City, of how you had his lifestyle question because he bought his mother a house, and then you had and then people will document whatever Foden did with his money and not a peep, right? So it's just they're inventing new ways to let us know how they feel about us as an entire group. And I might not be English, obviously, but it's the same in the US, right? So, you constantly have Black and minority athletes being held to a different standard, and their lifestyles being questioned, or the way they articulate themselves, or whatever it might be. And I'm just fed up with it. So the fact that it's now happening like again for England, we already saw the response to Saka missing his penalty, Rashford missing his penalty in previous tournaments, and it's just like, it just has to stop, and I don't think it ever will. But it just grates. It grates so much because it's just a reminder of like, can't do anything right kind of thing. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, I mean, I think of the Euro final against Italy in the shootout, where I think it was Rashford, Sancho, and Saka missed their penalties, and it was just monkey emojis in their Instagrams or their Instagram comment sections for ages. And it's the celebration police swarming Lewis Skelly has always been the height of hypocrisy to me, just because if you go on YouTube and you look at Sky Sports or like ESPN FC's accounts, they have videos on there of like, haha, the cheekiest celebrations, and it's Neil Maupay like copying James Madison's little beer pong celebration, or it's Jamie Vardy scoring a goal against Spurs and then tapping his badge to say, how many Premier Leagues have you won? I've won 1, you've won 0, right? And when it's a white player, it's it's like, haha, that's so cheeky, such personality, we love it. And then when it's a black player, it just feels like everyone all of a sudden changes their tone, and it's very wrong to be doing that. And this is a very serious conversation that we're having. No one's laughing now. This is very disrespectful, and it's just gross because people hide why they're doing it. But if you burrow down into it and you keep asking why, eventually the base reason for it is the same. So, I saw a tweet where it's a really like nothing picture of just Lewis Skelly just kind of like waving at someone when he's walking into the England building. And some guy quote tweeted it and said, wow, it's so clear that he's just an arrogant prick. And you're just saying, they're just like, why? What in that photo gave you that impression? Unless there's something inherent about this guy that makes you think that he's just inherently an arrogant guy, and people who look like him and talk like him and have the same culture as him are all inherently arrogant. So I'm right there with you, Drew. It's just so disappointing that we're still living in a time that this kind of attitude is prevalent, and all we can do is really just support Miles Lewis Skelly and other black footballers, and try to discourage that kind of behavior towards them as often as we can.
Yeah, no, I feel like I know where John stands, but I do want John's take as well. But I just kind of feel like it's going to be one of those things that, I mean, it's not going to change. And obviously we have so much political discourse seeping in to sporting discussions now as well, given the landscape, not just in the US, but in the UK and in other countries in Europe as well. In France, same thing. There's a lot of racism inside the French footballing, hierarchy, as another example. But I just don't understand why players' race should be the least thing you're concerned about. You know what I mean? And that's just one thing I probably won't ever understand. So,
yeah. John, you wanna come in on this? Any thoughts you've got?
No, I think you guys said it beautifully. It's sad. The only thing I'll add is that there's so much hypocrisy too, because if it's your player on your team, it's not a factor, right? But when it's a rival fan, then all of a sudden you feel like it's okay that you can make those jokes or make those comments, and those are the fans. Don't even get me started with the media. I mean, it's a cesspool. I mean, it is. Just media in general nowadays is kind of a cesspool, but specifically English media when it comes to black players. So, and it's not new either. So you think it'd get better, but it doesn't. It doesn't. So, I echo what you guys have said about the issue. Couldn't really say it better myself. It's just do better. That's all I can say. Do better.
Yeah, and I feel like I've been seeing it everywhere recently. Like I'm thinking about Jamie Carragher saying that the African Nations Cup is inferior to Copa and the Euros, and everyone's kind of asking him, why do you feel that way? And now, just today, Wesley Fofana from Chelsea is dealing with a bunch of racist abuse off the back of the match, and it's like, it's possible to have a football-based discourse without doing this kind of thing, without turning it into racial abuse and saying disgusting things towards one another. So yeah, it's just really sad that there's still people out there who feel that way.
What's so frustrating about that as well, I don't know if you follow her, but Milena Daudovic, a really good follow on social media, but she's a huge Chelsea fan, and she was kind of saying, she highlighted the monkey emojis that Fofana received. And it was coming from Arsenal supporters, and why that frustrates me so much is you're supporting a club that has been at the tip of the spear in terms of supporting the Black and Brown community for decades, and yet that's still your response to another player who's Black, even though they're at a rival club.
Yep. Please
remove yourself from the fan base if that's how you feel about it. Like, you have no business go support Millwall, quite literally. Yeah. So yeah, that also frustrated me quite a bit, and I retweeted what she said about it, and she's absolutely correct. Doesn't matter that she supports a rival club; it's accurate. Like, there should be, at no point have I ever gotten so mad at football that I've decided to criticize someone's whiteness. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah, and it goes back to like I said, that hypocrisy, because the Arsenal fans, those same Arsenal fans will probably be up in arms if. And probably were up in arms, I'm guessing, when Saka received racist abuse,
right?
And probably came to his defense. So at least I'd hope that that's the case, right? At least that there's some humanity in them, or they're just driveling racists. So which is another option. I'm not discounting that.
Can't discount it, right? Exactly.
Yeah. But I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt here. Probably shouldn't, but. At worst, you're a terrible racist. At best, you're a hypocrite. So either way, it's not a good look.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. It's racism isn't just a thing that you get to throw around at players and teams that you don't like. It's it's a thing that you have to discourage every minute, every day, no matter who you don't like or what team someone's on or what country they're from, all that jazz. So if you're listening and you don't think otherwise, please change your mind. But yeah, I think that's all I've got on that topic. So we're doing Fallers, right? This came from Fallers.
Trossard is mine.
We had such an important conversation that I forgot about what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, let's talk about Trossard, John.
Man, it's like, come on, dude, what are you doing? This was like one of my favorite players last season, and now it's like it's a shell of his former self. Like, sometimes you'll see some great stuff, and then sometimes it's just it's mostly just inconsistent, and a lot of it's bad. I don't know if he's being overplayed, perhaps. I mean, we went over this last time I was on here, and you're hoping to see some progress, and it's not there. It's just bad. So I don't know what we do with that at this point. I mean, that is clearly an area that we need to upgrade in some way. I don't know. Maybe that changes. Martinelli goes back there, and then when Saka comes back. But I mean, does that sound great? I mean, that's still a little. Ugh. Martinelli had his own shortcomings there, so I don't know. He's my follower for sure, and it's just like getting a little boring, like having to say that every other week.
Yeah, I think back sometimes to this thing that Alex Moneypenny from the Canon podcast and the Different Knock said, where he there were reports about Saudi interest in Trossard, and he said I would sell them, or I would sell Trossard. Like if you get me like 40, 50 million for him. Actually, I don't even think the number was that high. I think he said like 30 to 40, something like that. If you get me like a good offer for Trossard, then like, yeah, let's sell him this summer and replace him. And he got cooked for saying that. But looking back, I think he was, I think he was kind of right. And I think we are witnessing Trossard maybe starting to hit the age cliff a little bit. And, he's not secure passing backwards. That wasn't a problem really against Chelsea, but it's just something I've kind of noticed recently with him. And against Chelsea, he had 3 really good chances fall to him. And either he would take too many extra touches and the chance would go away and, he wouldn't be able to really get a shot off, or he would make terrible contact and scuff the shot. I mean, I'm thinking about when a rebound fell to him and Sanchez was a little bit outside of his goal. There were 2 defenders rushing back to cover it. So it wasn't exactly shooting into an empty net or anything, but he just had to volley it and put that ball on target. And there's a good shot that it might be 2-0. And he didn't do that. He again made bad contact. The ball kind of just swerved to the left out of bounds, and that was that. And I thought it was a really good chance. It's just really disappointing, and it's not something that we would notice except for the fact that he's getting most of the chances. And when you get most of the chances, you really do have to put one of those away. So yeah, I am pretty disappointed just with Trossard in terms of finishing, and it's tough because we're not really in a position where we get to just bench him. There's not really anyone on the bench who's going to replace him. Obviously, when we get back from the international break, Saka might start to figure back into the team, and then you have Martinelli and Waneri. So there's a bit of and Sterling, if you want to count Sterling. There's a bit of interchange on the wings you could do there, and there's kind of the return of a pecking order. But Trossard still is kind of one of our more important players attacking wise. So
that's part of the problem. I mean, he is one of our most important players attacking wise, and I don't think you can look at the anemia of our attack and not put Trossard directly into one of the genesis of that problem. He's not the cause of it completely, but he's certainly a symptom, or not a symptom, but he's a cause of the symptoms of our attack being slightly anemic. And it doesn't help when he just can't get a good consistent form in. Maybe it's a rut, but I mean, we have enough, I think, data now that he's played enough games where it's just he can't be. I don't think you can rely on him for a full season. And I don't think that was the plan, to rely on him for a full season. Maybe it'd be better if he comes off the bench and stuff like that. But, I don't think it's let me put it this way. I don't think his situation is his fault right now.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's a bad player. I don't think that, he was ever supposed to be a starting left back for us this season. I think it was supposed to be between him and Martinelli, but, injuries and things like that kind of changed the scenario. And he's doing, I think, the best he can, but it's not good enough.
Yeah. I think my most honest take on Trossard is that he was an excellent kind of stopgap for what we were looking for back when we signed him. And I think we've just trusted him with his specific role for maybe a year too long. I think this was probably the season in which we should have transitioned away from him and found someone else to take over that role in the squad. And I think this summer we're probably going to do that. And that's not me saying he's a bad player. I just think for what we're trying to do, we've given him too much responsibility in trying to hit that goal. But Drew, I want to bring you in on this. Kind of what are your thoughts on Trossard's performance against Chelsea, and then maybe what his position is in terms of the squad, and whether or not he should still have a role.
I feel like we talked about this last week too. I'm trying to remember. But I feel like, or maybe I had this conversation in my head because my head swirls when I'm at work, but I feel like because we know that we went after a winger in the summer, that I would imagine the club already was pre-planning to move away from him this season before, but we weren't able to get the deal done, and that's okay, But I do feel like unquestionably now, moving into next summer, getting rid of him is going to be not getting rid of him. I don't think he's disposable like in that way, but I feel like upgrading that position will be a priority depending on other business that we do. I think that's also part and parcel of why I feel like getting Isak might be questionable, because if you go out and get Isak, you might then run the risk of having to re-sign Trossard, because there might not be enough money left over to upgrade left wing as well. So it's a bit tricky. How he performed against Chelsea, I'm with John and you. I feel like when he's supposed to be one of the beneficiaries of all the chances we do create, and he just can't put chances away now, which is very different from what we've seen from him previously, kind of similar to Ødegaard in a different way in terms of like ball striking for Ødegaard, but for Trossard, these are chances that he would have been putting away before this season, right? So you have to kind of ask the question, well, what's happened with him? It'll be a different case scenario, but it just shows that level of inconsistency is what you can't afford if your entire goal is to push for major honors, right? Not just in Champions League, but also in the Premier League. So, I would say he was one of our worst performers against Chelsea. One of the only ones I had a question mark on, really, just because, if he's supposed to be one of our chief finishers at the moment, he's just not doing his job in terms of what we really need him to be in the team for. That's a bit frustrating. I certainly would sell him. I don't want us to extend his contract. I think we need to get rid this summer. I probably would have been fine with selling him in the summer previous if we had plans to actually guarantee to bring in an actual replacement / upgrade. But I think overall, his time at the club, you can say he's been a pretty solid servant. I think he probably overperformed 1 year, and that kind of made us all have higher expectations than maybe we should have. But I can't fault him in total. I just kind of feel like we got into a position where we didn't expect him to be in, and I think John touched on that before perfectly, so I don't really have to more to say on that. But overall, I'm overall happy with what he's done across the board. But I just feel like this has to be his last season. I would actually be really disappointed if we actually extended him. I know there was some talk about potentially extending him that you kind of saw start to bubble the surface, and I do think that would be a big mistake if we actually did do that. So,
hopefully, if that is something that we're considering doing, Berta has some thoughts on it. So we'll come to my faller then, and for me, I think we need to talk about the officiating in the match, and that is my faller. It's very fortunate that we got away, or not got away, but it's very fortunate that we managed to win this match, considering some of the calls or the missed calls that we witnessed. It's been a really long, draining season when it comes to refereeing decisions. I mean, we're looking at 5 red cards in the Premier League, and frankly, I think 4 of them were nonsense. The only one that really I was okay with was Lewis Skelly's against West Ham, and even then, you can argue that he was fouled first before he brought down Mohamed Kudus. So just, and this is Chris Kavanagh who's officiating this match. This is the guy who sent off Rice for kicking the ball away at home to Brighton back in September. This is the guy who said to Rice on camera, "I don't have a choice," and he sent him off. So why didn't you have a choice, Chris, when Wesley Fofana stamped Declan Rice while he was on the ground? And then Rice got up and yelled at him, and Fofana very clearly knew what he'd done and was just, giving him, giving him this face, just like, yeah, keep talking shit. Like, I don't care. I'll fucking do it again. why was that? Why did you have a choice there? Yeah, and then Fofana went on to, commit a bunch of yellow card level fouls at least. I counted maybe 4 or 5 there. I mean, he started the match by almost clotheslining Timber in midair. I don't really think Fofana was trying to play football at the Emirates. And again, that doesn't justify any of the abuse that he received, but I think the way that he went about the match against us on Sunday was pretty disgraceful. And then Mark Cucurella was, I think that was a handball personally in the box. He very knowingly just kind of leaned in with his side and tried to manipulate the ball with his arm. That is the definition of a handball. That didn't get called. I don't know why. It feels like an Arsenal player has to get shot in the face in the penalty area to get a spot kick these days. And then, in addition to that, Mark Cucurella was having a go at the linesman every time there was a call that he didn't like, which is pretty regularly. Who else? And then there was Enzo Fernandez, who also was getting referees' faces, was acting like a tough guy with Gabriel. Then there was Moises Caicedo, who, the moment he lost one duel, decided to make his match about kicking Odegaard out of the game. And he was trying to injure players. None of these guys got sent off. None of these guys got any sort of significant warning or discouragement from their behavior. And yet I'm supposed to sit here and be okay with the fact that we lost 6 points because of players kicking the fucking ball away while they're on a yellow card. That is the encapsulation of what this PGMOL is about. They don't care about player welfare. They don't care whether or not these guys are able to continue earning their living, to continue playing football, because the referees don't view them as the stars of the game. The referees view themselves as the stars of the game, so they don't give a shit if the referees are if the players are fit. But when it comes to kicking a ball away or saying some mean words to the referee in certain circumstances, apparently Chelsea can get away with it. Then suddenly we've crossed the line, and I just think it's an absolute disgrace. And I pray that I run into a PGMOL referee in real life one day, just so I can walk up to them and say, "You're just the guy with the cards. You are not important. You are the most replaceable cog in this machine. Get over yourself." So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we've been subjected to this kind of treatment from the refs, but I am just so over it. So, rant over. I will hand it off to you guys, and let me know if I've gone overboard here.
No, I don't have much to say. I mean, I know neither of you really watch MLS, but there was a non-penalty call in the Portland Timbers match yesterday that I had to cover for work. And it was, and I don't say this like hyperbolically, it was the most blatant non-penalty call I've seen in about a half decade. And just feel free to Google. You can just go on Twitter and kind of Google it. So it was it. Phil Neville had his post-match press conference about it. And he basically ripped into the refs saying, "This is the worst standard of officiating I've ever seen. Don't pay them. Basically give the money to charity." That's how bad it was. And first of all, that's hysterical. But secondly, and I just feel like there's a broader issue with a lot of the standard of refereeing in multiple leagues. It's not just the Premier League, although obviously Premier League gets the most media attention for it. But I'm with you. I do feel like there is a big issue with, and I don't want to kind of like pathologize about it or assume, but I do feel like it just always seems to be sometimes where, obviously a lot of people become refs when their footballing career didn't pan out, so they view the referee track as a way to become some kind of a personality potentially, and maybe that's the reason why they want to make things about them. But I even had Arsenal fans telling me that would be too harsh. That's not a red on Fofana, and I was speechless because what on earth are you talking about? And he had about 5 different instances where he should have been sent off before the yellow card he got. That was the most lenient of the ones he should have received the yellow card for, was when he got the yellow card for. So it's just, I've given up hope about getting any sort of high standard of refereeing in England until we start to bring in top referees, regardless of where they're from in Europe. Just have them ref Premier League matches, pay them extra if you have to. It doesn't really matter, because I just feel like the sanctity of the game gets ruined when you have things that are so blatant to the naked eye just go missing every single week, multiple times a weekend. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I just found that Timbers penalty that's ridiculous.
And do you know what the reason why? He said the ref admitted that was a penalty, but I let play on because you got a chance after that, and then he didn't pull it back after that to award them the penalty. That's the most nonsense thing I've ever heard.
A lot of people seem to believe that, though. A lot of people seem to believe that if you get a shot on goal, then like anything goes.
You can let the play run out, sure, but you're supposed to bring the call back, and that's when you play advantage, and then you bring it back for the call if you don't see it in real time or whatever, like, or if VAR intervenes. It was too, like, and the ref is standing right there looking at it and still didn't award it in real time. Absolutely insane. So yeah.
No, that's crazy. John, what are your thoughts on the refereeing display that we saw on Sunday?
I mean, it's I've kind of run out of stuff to say about these refs. It's just so fucking bad. It's just so bad. It's so blatantly bad. And you know, I've said this again and again and again. You're the best league, ostensibly self-proclaimed best league in the world. You are the richest league in the world. Why is the level of refereeing so poor? It's either, and it's one of those things where it's like Hanlon's razor. Like, you should not generally attribute malice that which could be explained with just incompetence. But here, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's an affirmative decision to do whatever you want as like a fuck you, what are you going to do about it kind of a situation that the refs have. And I also think at the same time, there's a level of incompetence that is not being checked because fuck you, what are you going to do about it? You know, it's really disgusting, and it's ruining my enjoyment of the game. And I know a lot of fans feel the same way. You want to talk about no calls that we've got? I forget the game it was, but when Saka was literally just kicked from the back in the penalty box, like not even trying to get the ball, someone just. Well, remember it was early
James
on.
MacArthur when we played Palace.
Yes.
Yeah, man. That was. I mean, I still think about that. Like I don't understand what the purpose of VAR is. I don't understand what the purpose of any of the checks and balances in the league that they have. And I've tweeted this or sent out a message about this before. I don't think these oversight, like the PGMOL, is for the betterment of the game. It's not to protect the sanctity of the decisions and the league and the rules. It's to protect the referees, and it's to protect. I guess you can call it the bottom line of the league. And you see this in basketball in the NBA a lot. Like, the refs will make bad calls, and a lot of the times it leads to the drama, which makes it more exciting. And I am absolutely convinced that that's an aspect of what's happening in the Premier League, that these calls create talking points that make you talk about the league. And they don't care about whether it's the right decision. They don't care about player safety. Injuries shake things up that can make it more interesting for the league. And I honestly, if you had told me that they had some kind of a meeting and someone put like a bug in the office, and that you hear them saying, yeah, you know, maybe a couple injuries here and there will make it interesting for the top four, I would not be surprised if that's an actual conversation that has happened at some level between the referees. I absolutely would not, especially with that amount of money at stake. You know, if you can make it more interesting, which unfortunately here we are talking about it, that's, I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs, because I don't think that there's any other explanation at certain points for some of the decisions that we've seen over the years. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah. I think it's almost proof positive of what you're talking about, based on the fact that Howard Webb has his own show in which he goes over refereeing decisions and explains, for the most part, why they're right. You know, and I think it's pretty clear that they view themselves as part of the entertainment product, and they're there to make these game-changing decisions so that people talk about it, and then on the back end, the PGMOL's buddies who work at Sky Sports and Howard Webb himself can get on camera and talk about why these decisions were correct and continue the conversation until next week when they do it again. And slowly but surely, people start to view the referees as,
part of the entertainment.
Yeah, as part of the entertainment, as characters on the stage and not stagehands.
They're like the heel. If you watch wrestling, they're like the heels.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting, and I know we're running out of time, so I won't say this briefly. And for those of you who are in Europe and watch hockey, or if you're in the US and watch hockey, I always will draw the comparison to how the NHL deals with guaranteeing that they get as close to as possible to making the right call. Like, they'll take 5 and 6 minutes to review goal footage to make sure the correct decision is made. They don't do things quickly. Player safety is a priority in hockey, and I feel like when you look at the difference between just that, like the care that's involved in making sure that players, teams, or fans aren't like regularly screwed out of decisions that can be season defining or whatever it might be. And when you compare that with how the Premier League operates, it's hard to go against what you and John are saying. And I never actually even thought about it, but it actually does make sense because, drama does sell. And we know that to be true in terms of when it comes to the entertainment business. And unfortunately, as much as we all love football or whatever other sport we're all into, sports are entertainment. And because as John pointed out, when there is this much money involved in the Premier League and who knows who that's going to benefit, it would not shock me if driving certain narratives via poor refereeing decisions is actually part of the overall package, or if it's going to become it, because the officiating has gotten worse as the Premier League has gotten more wealthy. That's clear, and that's also that's a reality that I'm gonna have to sit with for a little bit, because that actually does make a whole lot of sense to be.
How is that the case? If we have more technology now to safeguard against poor decision making, how on earth, other than absolute purposefulness, are you getting worse when you have more technology to make the right decision? It makes absolutely no sense, and it's almost like gaslighting us into believing that otherwise.
Yeah, and the way they've rejected the goal line technology that we saw in the World Cup, or how you see it. And if you just watch any other league that's of the top 5 leagues, you do not see this. There's some questions in the Liga about how Real Madrid and Barcelona are officiated. We know that to be true as well. But when you look at Liga or Bundesliga or whatever league, the standard of refereeing is, which is why all those referees always do such a phenomenal job in Champions League compared to any other English referee that may or may not be in it. It's just night and day. And those leagues are worth a fraction of the amount of the Premier League is worth. So, yeah, that just triggered me a little bit. That made me frustrated to think about. Yeah. So, thanks, John.
That's what I'm here for. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we'll have to talk about. I mean, that's a whole pod in itself.
Genuinely,
yeah. So, let's make a note to revisit that maybe in the summer or something. But we'll leave it there, and we'll be back later this week, probably to talk news, and maybe we'll play a game or two, a ranking game. We'll see. We'll chat. But thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of the conversation and to listen to us chat Arsenal. Chat Arsenal. Yes, of course. That was my Sean Connery impression. Anyway, you can follow John at 305cast and Yellow Ribbons on Blue Sky and Twitter. Switch those around. But yeah, Drew, you can follow at Geechee Kid on Twitter and at Supply and Demand Drew on Blue Sky. You can follow me at Shamsdale, both on Blue Sky and on Twitter. You can follow the pod on Blue Sky and Twitter at Not That Gooner. And then you can follow us on Instagram at Not That Kind of Gooner. We have a YouTube channel that I completely recommend you subscribe to. That also is Not That Kind of Gooner. And then please do leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever else you listen to your podcasts. And yeah, we'll be back with you again later this week, and hopefully after an unscathed few World Cup qualifiers or friendlies, whatever the players are playing in. So until then, take care, and we'll talk to you. And bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you.
To go. Here's the little scrum here. Santi Cazorla. Kayo Saka. That is a goal. Wanieri.